feeling stuck like you, don't know what to do. I know there's more in you, but you cannot see it. There's a remedy, and I've got the strategy. It's time to turn your dreams into a reality. Push, and I'ma help you. 'Cause it's time to. And I'ma help you. 'Cause it's time to.
Welcome back again to another episode of Push Talk Podcast. My name is Ose Sesay, and I am your host. And I'm here to push you towards your purpose and business, career, and beyond. And I have so many guests that want to do the same. So before we get started, take a moment, hit the subscribe button here on YouTube. You can find us at Push Talk Podcast, as well as on Apple Podcasts. You can find us on Push Talk Podcast. And while you're there, go ahead and leave us a review. We want to continue to make sure we provide you content that you love and hear what your thoughts are of our show. So today we have an amazing guest. Her name is Steph, and she's going to talk to us about what do you do when you're feeling stuck in your career, how to advance, how to move forward. And Steph is the perfect person for that. And let me tell you why. Stephanie is a career professional with a background in strategy, business development, and partnership. She earned her MBA and master's in international studies from Wharton Business School, whoop whoop, go Stephanie, and the University of Pennsylvania School in Arts and Science. She currently works as global sales and growth partnerships on the global client group at Google. She will share tips today, you guys, with us on just navigating your career, what to do in the corporate world when you're feeling stuck, and she's going to make sure it's a good time. So get ready, get your pens and papers, and let's go ahead and talk to Stephanie. Hi, guys. Welcome again to Push Talk Podcast. It's Ose Sesay here. As you already heard, the great introduction for Steph here that we have, who's going to really help us get unstuck in our careers. It's not easy, guys. So Stephanie, welcome. We are so excited to have your expertise today on Push Talk Podcast, where we push people towards their purpose in business, career, and beyond. So welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're
Really
welcome. I
excited
see
to
that
be here.
nice glow you have from your little international vacation. So you're looking amazing. So,
Thank you.
but let me not digress. Let's focus on what we're here for. We only have 15 minutes to get our listeners pushed towards their purpose in their career. We want you to teach us how to get unstuck. So my first question to you, Stephanie, is just kind of give us a high level of your career track so we understand who you are, what you've experienced in your career, how we know you are the type of person that would give us the best advice, because you have such a successful career, and I'm so proud of you.
Successful. Okay, thank you. Yeah, sure. So I started my career in a global financial services company called AXA. It was a leadership rotational program because when I was looking for roles close to wrapping up with my undergrad, I knew that I wanted to be in a role that was strategic, that allowed me to solve business problems. But I also went on my personality, and my personality is not to focus on something for the longest time. I mean, I'm a playful worker. Exactly.
Yeah.
I looked for something that would give me diversity and experience. So this was a leadership rotational program for 2 years plus, and I went through different areas of the business. I did corporate strategy, where you work on business problems such as cost cutting, such as innovation, define strategic plans for the business for moving forward, whether it comes to profitability or acquiring market share. I worked in the transformational business as well. And then I did operations because I thought to myself that it would make little sense to have the strategic side and not have the implementation side. So I don't think that I do it best, but I think what I've always done is to be very thoughtful and kind of iron out what is important for me to get out of a role. And it's always been the same. It's always been to acquire a well-rounded experience. And then when that rotation was coming to an end, so that was in the insurance industry, and I, again, like I said, I always go with my personality, and I get bored easily. So I want to be where
I know
things are
you like to zoom,
exciting.
zoom, zoom, Stephanie. I have to keep
Exactly.
up with you. I need like 3 cups of coffee.
Okay. I want to be in an industry where I feel like there's a lot going on, right?
Mhm,
So at that point, I decided that I wanted to be in corporate, in cards. So
mhm,
I went to American Express, and
mhm,
in American Express has essentially three business, I would say, departments. So they have the merchant. So the merchant is any business that accepts American Express, like your local Macy's or whatever. They have the consumer. You and I are consumers because we have an American Express credit card. And then they
okay.
have the B2B, which is like business to business
Okay.
transactions. And so my ultimate goal was to end up in consumer because I wanted to see the impact of my work. And you tend to
Mm,
see that a little bit more if you're in the consumer space. Like if you launch a product, you can see people use it, right? If
yes,
you
yes,
launch
yes.
a service, you can see people use it and you can get that instant reaction. But the opportunity that I got was through the merchant side. And so
Mm,
again, that was like expanding on the strategic skill set I had from the previous role. And I went into a strategic thinking role. And that was, American Express had a lot of challenges being
mm,
accepted where Visa and MasterCard were accepted, especially with small businesses like your mom
mm,
and pop shops,
yes,
like these
yes.
shops in your neighborhood, etc. So a lot of the initiative that I worked on was either you were finding third-party businesses to partner with them to accept American Express, or defining overall go-to-market strategy to make sure that we were just as relevant as Visa and MasterCard. But when I mentioned before, I'd always wanted to be in the consumer space. So I knew whilst I was in that role, I tailored my experience and I tailored my conversations so that when a role in that consumer space came up, that I was eligible for it, that I was qualified for it
Right.
to even throw my application in. And fortunately for me, it came. So I
Mm,
moved to the consumer business unit, and there I was working on partnerships and business development, which is a very
mm,
exciting role. So,
yeah.
American Express partners a lot with your Google, your Venmo. So example, you have a Delta credit card that says Delta and American Express at the same time. That's called
Mm,
a co-brand card. And so
mm,
my team will identify that kind of partnership and
mm,
build the business case for why it makes sense for American Express, but also, let's say, that Delta. And then
mm.
define who the client is. So the end consumer is Ase. Ase likes shopping. She likes
Yes,
Netflix.
I
She
do.
likes subscription services. So you kind of define
Mm,
the value prop to attract this kind of consumer. So I
um,
really liked that function because it allowed me to do different things. It allowed me to do partnership, to do business development, to do go to market. And along that same line, I co-founded a startup on um that was focused on natural skincare. And the purpose
yes,
was
you
of
are
that was
doing it. I want to interject for a second, Stephanie, because you move so well. Like you went from one career to another, and I want you to just mention a little bit, like what was the thing that really your strategy? Because we hear you're a strategic thinker, all
yeah.
the departments, everything you did. But what was the strategy you used to say, okay, I'm going into these new companies as a new grad? Because at that time you were, a new grad out of getting your bachelor's, right? I remember you were at Baruch, right?
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
you had to kind of say, how can I stand out to be able to move in those 2 years? It sounded like you moved a lot. What did you do to be able to navigate? And then my second follow-up question is, at what point was there any point you were stuck, and how did you overcome it? Because I know we all kind of go through that in our career, and I want to hear a little bit about that too as well.
Yeah, sure. Great. So I will answer them. I'll answer them together. I would say that I've been stuck many times. I'm stuck in my current role.
Mhm,
And I want to say that because oftentimes, like, I do it too. You go on LinkedIn and you see someone with a stellar career background and you're like freaking out and you're like, oh my God, like, I don't know what to do. But the point is you get stuck all the time.
mhm,
It's not a pleasant experience, but it's a necessary experience.
yeah,
And the way that I kind of solve for that is I think that it's important to do a lot of work to know yourself because
yeah,
that allows you to almost clear certain things out of your way quickly. And
yeah,
if you happen to find yourself in a place where you shouldn't be, you know that this is temporary. So, like I was saying, my personality is like, I like to be playful. I like to enjoy what I'm doing. I get bored easily. And so the way that I solve for that is I like to answer questions. That's how I think about work. So when I
Mm,
apply for a role, I'm like, what is this role? What question is this role solving? Right.
mm,
And my ultimate career goal is to be a general manager. So not necessarily
mm,
to be a CEO, but to be in the C level,
mm.
maybe doing go to market or anything that the business needs to move it forward. Right. So
Yeah.
being a general manager, you have to be what? You have to be strategic. You have to have a diverse experience. You have to be well rounded. The hard skills and the soft skills are all essential. And
Mhm,
so I remind myself constantly, right? So I was just talking to a friend and I'm like, the next 3 months, I need to like sit down and write what I need to achieve for my
mm.
career. And I
I
do
love
those
that.
things often. Exactly. I
Yeah.
do it often. There's never a time that I'm not stuck, right? I'm
Yeah.
always stuck.
Yeah. Well, I will
Yeah.
say, and I interrupted too because I love also that you mentioned even in the midst of navigating and growing in your career, because you have to tell them where you're at now, okay?
Yes.
But you also started a business, and this is just
Yes. Yes.
awesome. Like, and I interrupted. I wanted to just kind of throw that question in there, but
Sure.
tell a little bit about that, and then go into what you're doing now and how
Yeah.
that has evolved and so forth. I know
Sure.
we're so short of time. Goes 15 minutes goes so fast, so we
I
got a
know.
few minutes left.
I know. So, it's all back to the whole thing of like, what kind of question do I want to answer? So, starting the business was a passion project, really.
Mhm.
I'm Ghanaian. I'm from the northern part of Ghana, where
Yeah.
shea butter is heavily produced, right? And
Mm,
I was like, oh, like these women who produce the shea butter usually don't get as much of the income that comes from it. So, what can we do? We can start
mhm,
a natural skincare brand. The
mhm,
wholesale part is there, the retail part is there, but the money or the income and the profitability is going directly to the consumers and
mhm,
the community. And we did that for 2 years, and it was a wonderful experience. And that's another thing, right? You with your career, you need to like constantly think and evolve and be okay with letting things go when
yeah.
you realize that you
Good
can't
lesson.
do them as well as you wanted to do, right? And
Yeah.
it got to a point where I couldn't do that as well as I wanted to do.
Mm,
But the learnings from starting a company, the frustrations with like getting people to align, the frustration with working with people on your tech side, to your
mm,
producers, to the marketing, is essentially the same things that help me in my current job, is the
yeah.
same things that help me when I need to negotiate.
Yeah.
You need to ask us. There is no thing that I don't negotiate for. I negotiate
Yeah,
for
oh,
everything.
I know. You make sure I get every deal, and I would even say not even letting
Okay,
it go, but I feel like that's a business that you put on the shelf, right? So
right.
it's something you're going to come back to once you're in a different season of life. Which also too, you realize sometimes you're stuck in one thing, and you're like, I just have to put it on the shelf for a while, and then some things you do let go. So you're so right with that.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly. Yes. But to my whole point of being stuck, it's okay to be stuck. You will be stuck so many times.
Yeah.
And I'm just in a phase of my life where I am looking for ease. And so I am giving myself a lot of grace and
Yeah.
ease, right?
Yeah.
There's so many things that I thought will work out in a certain way and they didn't. And there's so many things I thought wouldn't work out and they worked out beautifully well. But
Hmm.
what remains the same is that I know that I'm smart. I know
Yeah.
that I love to have fun. I
Hmm.
love to enjoy the people and the things that I do. I know that I'm really curious. And because of that, I get bored easily. So I'm constantly shaping my role into a question like, what do I need to solve? And sometimes I think it's important that you break your career aspirations or your career that you have at the moment into different things. Because when you look at it overall, you're like, oh, I'm just doing this. But if you'd say, oh, let's say you're in a marketing team and you're like, one part of my function is to get people to understand our project. One part of my function is to get the different teams I understand with on the same page. There are certain parts that would happen better. There are certain parts that you would do well
Hmm.
versus the other. And it's important for you to break these things apart because when you do, it makes you feel good about yourself because when you see the parts that you're doing well, it helps you navigate the parts that are not going so well. And that's important because the better you feel about yourself and your output, the
Yeah.
more you can show up.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I'm constantly, looking for things that make me feel good, that make me feel
Mhm.
like, I'm playing a role, I'm
Yeah.
contributing, I'm driving
Yeah.
impact. because it's important to me for how I think about myself, my role, and the next phase of my career.
Hey guys, that's our show for today. Remember, Push Talks is only 15 minutes of motivational messaging to push you towards your purpose. But don't worry, don't fret. Come back again next week where we'll pick up and finish off this episode so you don't miss out. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube. Follow us on our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Push Talks Podcast. And we look forward to you joining us again for messages that will push you toward your purpose in business, career, and beyond.